Good morning, everybody. We are so good to be together. And this morning for our children's spiritual development, we have a special guest who's a longtime friend and a companion of USG. Jondhi Harrell is the executive director of the Center for Returning Citizens here in Philadelphia. And Jondhi is a key leader in Philadelphia, and actually he just came back from Washington, D.C. We was talking to Congress people and activists from all around the country who work with great concern on the mass imprisonment problem and crises in America. So Jondhi, welcome.
Thank you.
It's always good to be together.
Hello, kids. How's everybody doing this morning?
So Jondhi, there's so many painful, tough elements of the prison crises in America. We have more people in prison than any country in the world, and there's so many ways in which that causes pain. Today we want to talk a little bit with you about how it affects children.
Yes.
I've been a chaplain, a jail chaplain, and served families in jail in Chicago and seen it in some ways, and I've seen it here in Philadelphia in many ways. What do you say to the kids who may or may not have experience in their own families with imprisonment about how they might think about how this hits kids?
Well, it's very difficult. You have to realize that when a judge gives a sentence to a father or a mother, he's also sentencing the family, because what he's saying is that person is going to be away from their family for many years. So for a child, this is especially impactful because it means that if it's your mother, she's not going to be there when you're sick. She's not going to be there to cook dinner for you, to take care of you, to help you with your homework, to grade your papers, all the things that parents do. If it's your father, it means he's not going to be there to work and to mow your grass or to paint your house or to teach you all the things that a father teaches a child. So on both levels, it impacts kids. It also means that when it comes time for you to have plays in school, or if you're on a sports team, that your parent is not going to be there. But the most important thing is, day to day, the person who loves you the most in the world is not going to be in your life. And that's a very difficult thing for a young boy or a young girl to have to deal with.
Yeah, and Jondhi, one way I think about it, I want to see what you think about it, is we like to teach our children, many of us, about consequences. So if somebody does something wrong, especially multiple times in the house, maybe there's a consequence of a timeout or something. However, my understanding is that in America there has been no rise in crime. There's just been a rise in the consequences. So isn't it true that almost like in a house with parents where the kids kept up with the same behavior, but the parents just started giving more and more timeouts, even though the kid wasn't misbehaving anymore?
Yes.
Do you think that's a fair way to look at it?
It is a fair way. What's been happening in this country is a lot of politicians. Kim was just talking about how I was in Washington, D.C. The reason I was there was to talk to politicians about changing laws and making things better for families, for children, for persons who have made a mistake in their life, and now they're in prison and they're trying to come home and do better. But for the children, this is especially impactful because they haven't done anything wrong. So you're suffering a consequence of what your parent did when you're still basically doing the things that a child is supposed to do. Obey your parents, listen, go to school, do well, but you're being punished for something that's beyond your control. And one thing that politicians have to realize is that mass incarceration and prison really affects the family structure, and it really hurts children the most.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, do you have some ideas that we can be thinking about? I think when a family has a problem, because I think for the kids, maybe one of the ways they can kind of understand it the most is if, do you have a consequence for bad behavior? Do you ever get grounded for doing something against the rules in your family or in your neighborhood? I think when it's happening a lot, what we like to do is sit down as parents in a community. It takes a village to raise a child, and try and come up with some creative solutions to get back and not just get tougher and tougher on punishment. My feeling is that the nation of the United States has gone in an unhelpful, in an unjust direction of getting just too harsh on punishments. It's not helping anybody. So can you kind of connect maybe the dots on that of like how a family or a neighborhood would help with a kid who's having some troubles and misbehaving too much with creative solutions, and how our nation might get more creative and constructive and deal with all the factors involved?
Yes. I run the Center for Returning Citizens, and what that does is, as an organization, we work to look at this issue from many different levels. We look at how a person thinks, what they do, where they work, how they treat their family, because all of these things contribute to whether you do right things or wrong things. Just like in your house, if you do something wrong, if you misbehave in school, there's a consequence, there's a punishment. So life is like that also. In life, if you run a red light or you speed in traffic, a policeman is going to stop you and try to correct your behavior. If you do worse things, then the policeman would not only stop you and correct your behavior, he might take you to jail and let you talk to a judge, and the judge would try to alter your behavior. But if it keeps on happening, then you get incarcerated for a period of time because you haven't learned that your behavior has consequences.
Right.
And this starts in the community. But often, many times in poor communities, people do wrong things like selling drugs or robbing or breaking people's houses because of conditions, because they don't have food. If someone's shoplifting in a store, you have to look at, are they shoplifting clothes because they have no clothes? Are they shoplifting food because they have no food in the house? Or are they just doing wrong things because they want to do it? So you have to look at the underlying reasons for criminal behavior and then try to craft solutions. We often talk about alternatives to sentencing. That sounds like big words, but what it really means is when a person does something wrong, is there something else that we can do for them to help them to correct their behavior instead of sending them to prison? If they have a drug addiction and they are caught up in that, then perhaps we can send them to a program where they can get help. Perhaps they have mental illness and they're violent. Well, there may be medication or counseling that can assist them. It could be problems in their family, so there may be family counseling. There are many different things that can be done by the authorities, by the community, to assist people out of their difficult circumstances instead of sending them to prison. But if there are times when a person is sentenced to prison, then we have to look at what can be done while they're there to help them to transform and to become a better person. Oftentimes, a prison is called a corrective facility. So when you think about those words, correction, what are we doing while they're inside to correct their behavior, to help them to transform, help them to heal from whatever problems they have, and then they can come out and be a better person and fit into society and have a good life for themselves, for their family, and for their children.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Jondhi. We're going to be together next week on Sunday afternoon here for a teach-in where people from the whole community are going to come in. We expect hundreds of people to be here. And I think we all agree that the kids, our children, and our families, and in our communities, and have so much capacity to help us make this country a better place.
Yes.
So to bring this message to our kids today is really special to me, that they can hear some of your thoughts, Jondhi. And children and youth, we look to you to give us good questions and ideas of how to keep doing better as a country. So thanks for listening today.
Yes, most definitely. Thanks for listening. And oftentimes as a kid, it's difficult to understand some of the bigger issues that adults deal with. But it's important for you to start now while you're young. So as you grow, you will understand the world that you live in.
Blessings to you, Jondhi.
Peace and respect.
Peace.